What is up, Dynasty Leaguers? Welcome back into another DLF YouTube channel video. It's Tuesday, so it's mock draft day, and that means I've got another Dynasty Superflex mock draft coming your guys' way. This is just going to continue on with what, the new direction with these mock drafts are. We did a mock draft video last week. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties in terms of actually recording the draft, but I ran through a whole entire Superflex mock draft that I did on the Sleeper platform and ran through my personal process and everything. So we're going to do that same thing again. We're going to choose a different draft spot. This time I've picked the 111 to draft out of instead of the 1.05 last time. We're going to do my exact same strategy. I'm going to actually record it this time, and we're going to go pick by pick and see what we have going on here through the first 14 rounds of a Dynasty Superflex mock draft. So let's get right into the video. So like I said in the introduction, we're running through a Dynasty Superflex mock draft. This one's out of the 111 position, and we're just going to be running through my personal strategy because I want to see what would happen if, last week, basically I picked a slot where I can get myself 100% one of those top quarterbacks, one of the big name guys. And I picked 111 because I think at that position, you're not guaranteed one of those guys unless something drastic happens or, you're in a different kind of league that's not, pretty prototypical or consensus with how the quarterbacks go off the board. So I wanted to see, how my strategy would change with that. Would I still go 2 quarterbacks at the very beginning like I did last week? And that's usually how I like to do things. Do I mix it up a little bit more? Do I maybe go for the wide receivers a little earlier? This is all kind of things that I personally want to see, and I want to share with you guys to go through all this. I'm also going to be doing some 1 quarterback drafts here very soon for Dynasty because I know that there's still people that play in those formats. I'm not, forgetting about you guys. If you are doing 1 quarterback Dynasty startups, we will get to those very, very soon here. But this one's just going to be another quick Superflex mock draft, and it's going to be really, really fun. So I think we should just get right into it. Here's the sleeper board we have. Like I said, I'm out of the 111 position, and I think we can just get things started and get things rolling here as the computer kind of goes through all these picks. So naturally, for the first 5 picks were quarterbacks. I feel like that's pretty typical. And then it was Lamar Jackson and Dak Prescott going outside the top 5 before my pick. And then 4 running backs, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, and Dalvin Cook. So this is basically what I thought would happen, where the top 6 quarterbacks would be off the board before my 111 pick. So we really do have to kind of, consider what we have going on here at the quarterback position. Because like I said, my personal strategy is to lock down 2 very strong starting quarterbacks for fantasy, a third guy who's a strong starter as well, but doesn't have, perhaps the same ceiling or upside that my other 2 starters have, but they have some sort of longevity attached to them. It's not a risky like Drew Lock type of guy at my quarterback 3. So this is just really going to test that ultimate theory, because right now, we have basically whatever wide receiver we want to pick between Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown. We could go the Tyreek Hill or DK Metcalf route as well. The running backs, we have Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry. Not really looking at that right now, but I am looking at this quarterback position, and I think I'm going to go with Trevor Lawrence as the 7th quarterback off the board and my quarterback 1. I really like that just because of the value that Trevor Lawrence has. We haven't seen the production on the field yet, obviously, because he's a rookie, but I like having the value that Trevor Lawrence already brings to my Dynasty roster at the 111 there as my QB1. And then here at the turn, Alvin Kamara, Justin Jefferson went. I'm really tempted to take a wide receiver here to lock down a wide receiver 1. Of course, we can go AJ Brown or DK Metcalf or any of that. I'm tempted to do that, but I don't think I want to, just because, like I said, I'm going to keep repeating this. I feel like a lot of these guys at the top are all very much the same. They're all very similar players, maybe outside of like Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins just because of age, but they're all valued very similarly. They all produce very similarly. I'm not really ultimately too worried about, not being able to have a top tier wide receiver, in my opinion, at this 311 pick. The running backs, again, I'm not really looking, I don't really want to start with Derrick Henry. He was in my running back fades video as one of the running backs to fade in a Dynasty startup. I'm not really looking to start a team off with him. The other guys down here, Cam Akers, DeAndre Swift, Najee Harris, J.K. Dobbins, I feel fine about them, but not here at the 2.02. Same with the tight end position. Not really looking at that So I'm back at the quarterback position. We got Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow, Justin Fields. Man, this is tough. Like, I feel like I could go Russell Wilson and try to compete. I feel like I could go Joe Burrow and try to compete. But I think the way that we're going here with Trevor Lawrence as my QB1 at the 111, this is already turning out to be going to be like a young team. And I don't know if I'm going to necessarily compete right away with Trevor Lawrence. So I think I'm just going to go with Joe Burrow, see what I have with the upside there as my QB2. Both of these players I think are very, very similar in that offense with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon out of the backfield. I really like Joe Burrow's potential ceiling and upside, even though that he doesn't have the rushing upside that, you know, Justin Fields or Trey Lance offer. I feel like I could, you know, make that up just in terms of passing efficiency between Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow, two of the best quarterback prospects that I've seen personally in my lifetime. And since basically Andrew Luck as well. I think both these guys are phenomenal players, and both of them just need that shot to, you know, show out and do what they can. So here we're back up at the clock, 3:11 right now. Looking at the wide receiver position here, this is really where I wanted to see if I could get a wide receiver to come back to me. And the other guys, you know, basically a whole slew of them: Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Devontae Adams, Hopkins, Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, and Jamar Chase all went. So that left me my boy. That left me my boy Calvin Ridley there as my top wide receiver. And I think I really like going that direction because, you know, I'm not really looking at running backs right now, and I can just solidify myself this top wide receiver in Calvin Ridley, and then, you know, just continue on with that, with building out a strong wide receiver core. That is my biggest thing, is building out a strong quarterback and strong wide receiver core. You know, you can have a really good top running back as well, in my opinion, and I'm actually going to be looking at the running back position here. But I also, you know, am very much a zero RB type of guy, and I think that this team's not necessarily competing in year one. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I can kind of see how that goes throughout the, you know, the actual season, but you can kind of maneuver in many different directions with how you want to go about, you know, actually acquiring running backs. If this team's not competing, but it might be looking to compete in 2022, you know, I'm going to have potentially a higher draft pick. I can draft a high 2022 rookie running back and be kind of good there. So that's really just different directions that I want to be able to take my team in, and not, you know, back myself into a corner by really only drafting like a lot of really older guys, a lot of really younger guys. I want to be able to have a whole bunch of different options with this team and where I can take it over the next couple of months and into next year. So here at the 4.02, it's certainly interesting to see Darren Waller there and in the fourth round here, and basically George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, and Travis Kelce all went in the mid to late third round. So Darren Waller's definitely tempting. I don't think I'm going to pull that trigger here in the fourth round yet. Again, I don't really want to back myself into a competing corner so much. And I love Darren Waller. I love him a lot, but I think I can wait a round or two and see what I have with TJ Hawkinson or Noah Fant potentially, and just give myself more longevity at the position while also potentially having somewhat similar production. Not so much Noah Fant, but TJ Hawkinson, I think, could have very similar production to Darren Waller and what Waller did last year. Looking at the running backs here, we got Austin Eckler, who I love, Joe Mixon, Travis Etienne, and then it's a whole bunch of guys that I'm not really all that in love with. And then at the quarterback position, you know, we still have a whole bunch of guys. This sleeper ADP is like really weird with the quarterbacks because I don't necessarily think it's that accurate. You're not going to get Justin Fields and Trey Lance here in the fourth round, in my opinion, or Aaron Rodgers. You're not going to get those guys in the fourth round of a dynasty startup. So I think that is really weird, but I'm just going to kind of go with the flow with these quarterbacks and see where we're at. So the only thing that's preventing me from taking a wide receiver right now and really solidifying that is the fact that I know I can get a whole bunch of wide receivers here at this 5-6 turn, and potentially even the 7th round as well. So it's making me go back to this running back position. And, you know, I picked Travis Etienne last week in last week's video. And then all this stuff with like Urban Meyer wanting to use, you know, James Robinson and whatnot. And it's like really weird. And I'm super actually kind of concerned about Travis Etienne, not in terms of his actual talent or what he could potentially bring to the table. And I really hope that Urban Meyer is smart enough to just have Travis Etienne on the field as a 3-down back by the end of the year, but I'm not so sure if that's necessarily going to happen. So I am kind of worried about that a little bit, and I think that I'm just going to kind of pivot away from that. I would have liked to have taken Clyde Edwards-Helaire here, But I'm going to pivot away from Travis Etienne here, and I'm going to take Austin Eckler just as my main RB. And I don't necessarily need to touch the running back position again for the next few rounds with that top running back. And I'm really just going to hammer out these wide receivers and these tight ends as we move forward through the next of these middle rounds and stuff. And you'll see as we get through the rest of this kind of process and strategy how this one works out. I was really hoping actually that Javonte Williams would come back to me. The reason why I took Austin Eckler was I wasn't confident that Javonte Williams would make it back to me, but I kind of hoped that he did, because I actually would have snagged him right there and then try to have traded Austin Eckler away and had Javonte Williams as my RB1, which might sound weird to you guys, but that's ultimately like how I like to maneuver around my roster with the startup draft and stuff like that. So, but we're back here. Javonte Williams didn't make it to me. Mark Andrews is gone. We have the tight end position still on lockdown, and this is actually where I think I'm going to look at TJ Hawkinson. I'm going to solidify myself, in my opinion, my tight end 5, and a guy who I believe could take that next step forward this year while also still being like 24 years old. So he's fantastic as a dynasty tight end, a guy that I think would be an awesome pivot off of most of the other tight ends, at the top of him, maybe outside of Kyle Pitts. But I do like the 2-round discount on Kyle Pitts to TJ Hawkinson. So I really like that a lot. So I do like solidifying myself a top tight end. I've become more and more of a guy who just wants to plug and play a tight end. Doesn't really want to play that streaming game. I don't really like to do that, and I'm just kind of lazy. And so I'll take the shot on, one of those top guys and just have him as a plug and play every single week kind of guy, and more figure out my wide receiver, running back, or flexes on a weekly basis than that tight end position. Just kind of lazy like that. But, if it works, it works. So that's where we're at. Wide receiver position here. So this is where I'm really looking to hammer out all these wide receivers. So we're going to start with the very first one is Amari Cooper. That one's a very easy one for me over Chase Claypool and Jerry Jeudy and Kenny Golladay. I like Amari Cooper as the wide receiver 1 in the Dallas Cowboys Dak Prescott-led offense. Obviously he's attached to Dak for, the foreseeable future, at least the next couple of years. And I think him and Calvin Ridley are going to make a very strong pairing at my wide receiver position, really solidifying this wide receiver core and making it as strong as we can on a weekly basis. So then the only other thing that I really see is a problem with drafting here at the 111 is you kind of miss out on this whole section right here. All these wide receivers. That's why I felt really good about my team coming out of the 5 spot, because you're in that middle of the round there and middle of kind of the snake order that you can really hammer out those wide receivers really quickly. I'm not getting that same vibe here with the 111 because you have that massive, basically 2 rounds worth of picks between your next pick if you're not on your turn pick. And this is really what killed me right here, was all these wide receivers coming off the board between Amari Cooper and here, because I'm not ultimately a massive fan of a lot of these other wide receivers. I'm going to be honest with you. I do like having Laviska Shenault here as a potential Laviska Shenault Trevor Lawrence stack. Not really looking at Odell Beckham, not really looking at Debo. Michael Pittman I think is fine. Tyler Boyd I think is fine. I do like Rondo Moore and Elijah Moore. So both of them are pretty interesting here. Just going to double check on the running back position. There's some interesting players here at the running back position, but I'm not ultimately going to move down here. This ADP is so weird for quarterbacks, but we don't need to talk about that. I think here I'm going to take a high upside wide receiver 3, and I'm going to stack him with Trevor Lawrence. I like that stack with Laviska Shenault as my wide receiver 3. I'm not necessarily the biggest Laviska Shenault fan, but I do like kind of the discount that he provides over at least Rashad Bateman. And then, maybe some of these other guys like DJ Chark. You got an age difference between Tyler Lockett and Shenault. Maybe Shenault and Jalen Waddle. Definitely age difference with Julio and Adam Thielen here. So I like potentially a little bit of a discount there. With Laviska Shenault as my wide receiver 3. And of course I'm on the clock again. I can look at one more wide receiver here. And you know what? I think I'm just going to do another stack. I'm going to go with one more stack here. I'm going to go with Tyler Boyd as my wide receiver 4. If Laviska Shenault's not cutting it for me on a weekly basis, I feel very confident in what Tyler Boyd is going to be able to provide for me on a weekly basis as my wide receiver 3. I think that he's going to be, a very safe kind of wide receiver, and I also like the stack with Joe Burrow. I think Boyd, Chase, and Higgins are all going to have over 100 targets. I definitely think that that's all, very much well within the range of possibilities, just like it was last year with AJ Green instead of Jamar Chase. I think Tyler Boyd's going to be very safe. If you want a little bit more assurance, go check out the Cincinnati Bengals team preview that Cal just did with a couple other actual Cincinnati Bengals fans, including Scott Connor, DLF on here, Mannequin Chill. Scott Connor was on there, and they all talked about how, Tyler Boyd could kind of present a value in this offense because of how much that they're going to throw, and because that defense isn't necessarily still great. It's kind of like a discount, Dallas Cowboys offense, in the fact that you could realistically find value in Amari, CeeDee Lamb, or all the way down to Michael Gallup, just like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are kind of valued similarly as the top 2 targets for Dallas. Tyler Boyd's just kind of chilling down here as potentially a very massive value, but a big beneficiary of the fact that his role is very secured in this Bengals offense, and he is the slot guy. He's never going to see top, defensive or cornerback attention, and he can just kind of sit there and chill with 7 or 8 targets per game because Joe Burrow is throwing it 40 times a game, and that's going to be totally fine for his value. He could be like a 5 for 60 or a 6 for 70 type of wide receiver. Maybe finds the end zone every now and again, and like the perfect wide receiver 25 every single week, just plug and play. And no, the upside isn't there for sure, but that's why I like him as my wide receiver 4. Pair him with who I think could have a lot of upside in Laviska Shenault, and I like that pairing and that grouping right there for my wide receiver 3 and my wide receiver 4 at the turn. So my wide receiver position and core, I think, is very, very strong. And this is where I can start looking now. I need a quarterback 3. I'm going to start hammering out these running backs. A whole bunch of these running backs are now going to be on my radar. But at the quarterback position here, there's still a lot of other good options. Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones. Again, this isn't where I'm necessarily looking for my QB3 in the 9th round, but this is where I'm looking at it in relation to the other quarterbacks. I would be looking at guys like Zach Wilson. I'd be looking at guys like potentially Tua or Daniel Jones down here, or Mac Jones. I think these are all fantastic options as your QB3 in your Superflex. And again, not necessarily in the 9th round, just kind of within where all these quarterbacks are in and of themselves. So if you're in a league that really values quarterbacks and they're all going off in the 3rd round, then you need to start paying attention and looking at them in the 3rd round. But this is just how this board and this ADP and this artificial intelligence is drafting here. So we're going to go with it. 11th pick in the 9th round, and then the 10.02. This is, again, we're starting to look at the running back position. So I'm actually just going to solidify Damian Harris right there. I really like that one. And I was actually looking at potentially seeing if one of these quarterbacks would fall back, which I figured that they were with only 2 picks in between me. So Damian Harris there is my RB2. I really, really like that. I'm debating now, do I take an RB3 and take a shot on one of the quarterbacks falling back to me, or do I just take a quarterback now? And I think I'm ultimately just going to take a quarterback now, and I'm going to take Daniel Jones, who I think is like the perfect quarterback 3 as well. I said that about Mac Jones, but I feel like Daniel Jones is also in that same boat. Even though Daniel Jones doesn't necessarily present the same longevity as Mac Jones in his career, because it's very possible that Daniel Jones is just not good and the Giants move away from him sooner rather than later. I also believe that Daniel Jones has a very easy path to gaining a lot of value. With the addition of Kenny Golladay, Saquon Barkley's coming back. They still have Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram more as role players and not actual, their main players, their main receivers. I like those roles a lot better for those 2 guys. They drafted Kadarius Toney, whatever he is. He can't hurt Daniel Jones, in my opinion. So I like Daniel Jones as the potential to be, a top 15 quarterback. And if that happens, then he's going to gain a lot of value because he's being down here drafted outside the top 20, and he could gain value moving on into 2022. So I like Daniel Jones a lot. I also like Mac Jones a lot, like I already said, as another perfect kind of QB3 to move forward with that. But I like Daniel Jones more than Mac Jones, so I went with Daniel Jones there. So here at the 11-11 and the 12.02, Tony Pollard didn't make it to me. That's who I was kind of hoping for, and was the other guy that I was debating between him and Daniel Jones. But obviously, I'm just going to take Daniel Jones there and just call it a day. I also would have liked, Zach Moss or James Conner as well. Both other guys that you can just kind of potentially plug and play. I think, James Conner, obviously a lot easier to plug and play than Zach Moss, because I think that he's the actual lead back for the Arizona Cardinals. But Moss, could be the 1A in that, Buffalo Bills backfield, and if anything happens to Devin Singletary, it's all Zach Moss. And yeah, I know Josh Allen is soaking up red zone carries and stuff like that, and that sucks, but still like the starting running back for Zach Moss, and he caught a few passes per game last year as well, so it's not awful, it's not terrible. Just a guy that I think kind of presents a value right now in dynasty drafts. So I'm really just going to hammer out these running back positions because I'm not really feeling a whole lot of what's going on here. And ultimately, this is how my strategy this is kind of the premise of my strategy, is that I want that strong wide receiver core because I don't want to be down here drafting, Darnell Mooney, sure, but I don't want to be drafting like Henry Ruggs, Denzel Mims, Devontae Parker, Mike Williams. I don't want to be relying on these guys as my wide receiver threes or whatever to have more balanced approach and have better running backs. I'm much more comfortable having these running backs on my team and waiting for them to potentially have injuries on their team, at their other, running back teammates and stuff, because running back injuries happen. You need to know that running backs get hurt. They get hurt more frequently than other positions, and you need to be ready for that. So if you roster a lot of running backs and all of them, that you can make a case for in an argument that if their teammate or the starter above them goes down, these guys are going to slide into a pretty dominant role, then that's a guy that I want to have on my team. So the first one I like that is Gus Edwards off of this list. I like Gus Edwards because obviously he's on the Baltimore Ravens. I think that he's going to have a role in and of himself alongside J.K. Dobbins, but if anything were to happen to J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, plug and play, RB, 2 with RB1 upside in that Baltimore Ravens offense. The next guy I'm going to go with here is actually Nyheim Hines, a guy that we saw last year have a massive amount of PPR value, because it doesn't seem like that the Colts necessarily want to use Jonathan Taylor in that way. I don't really understand why, but Nyheim Hines had games last year where he had absolutely explosive games, kind of plays a James White role in that Colts offense, and I think could be a big beneficiary of Carson Wentz also being there as well. So I like Nyheim Hines as the PPR kind of change the pace back with Jonathan Taylor. And if Jonathan Taylor were to get hurt, it would be Marlon Mack to be the next guy up. But I think Nyheim Hines would also see kind of a little bit of an increase of volume as well for that one. So I like drafting Nyheim Hines there. And we're just going to keep on hammering out these running backs here. Next one's going to be Ramondre Stevenson as a clear-cut backup to Damian Harris. I think that Sonny Michel is probably not going to make the team. So I like grabbing Ramondre Stevenson there as the rookie that the Patriots drafted this year. Jamal Williams, that's pretty easy for me. Obviously, if anything happens to DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams is that next guy up. And we're already hearing about, Jamal Williams is the A back, in this offense, and DeAndre Swift's playing more of the B back. So if it's a Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon situation, Jamal Williams is playing that Melvin Gordon role. He's going to have value. I think that there's a lot of potential, touches in this backfield in terms of rush attempts and targets, even for as bad as this Detroit Lions team is going to be. And Jamal Williams is going to be a part of that. I think that he could absolutely get up to 150, 175 touches in this offense, with and he is a very good pass catcher as well too. But if you see him with like 140, rush attempts and another 35 or 40 receptions, I don't really think that's out of the realm of possibilities for Jamal Williams. And if that happens, he's going to have games. And let alone, like I said, if DeAndre Swift were to get hurt, Jamal Williams is RB2 with RB1 production, plug and play. You don't even need to think about it with having him in on your roster. So this is my team right here. I'll move this aside here. This is how my team actually ended up with Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow as the back-to-back quarterbacks. We got Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper, Laviska Shenault, and Tyler Boyd to lock in my wide receiver position. And then TJ Hawkinson to lock in my tight end position. And then all of those running backs, I want to have a 1.5 to 1 or a 2 to 1 running back to wide receiver ratio. And that's really what I'm just trying to go for here, is just slamming out all these running backs. I want to add another wide receiver or two. Obviously, I don't really want to go in with only 4 wide receivers. You can add some high upside guys here as you move toward the end. Guys like, Nelson Aguilar, or I really like Jacoby Myers late as well too. Just other guys like that who have some upside, but that you're not really going to start or need to rely on starting because you already have 4 great options at that position. It's more so trying to figure out your running backs and figure out who all your flexes are and stuff. But this is a team that I think I like overall because it's got a nice, flow to it. It's got a nice, in terms of options and directions, very nice in terms of all that, with a balance of age upside, youth, some production right now in Calvin Ridley, Austin Eckler, Amari Cooper. I might look to maybe potentially flip Austin Eckler for Clyde Edwards-Helaire or something like that. Try to get younger at the running back position, which would try to help me ultimately get into, having more options and more directions with what I can do with this team. But I like that. I don't like it as much as I had with my 1.05. So I think my strategy is a little bit weirder whenever you get into the back half, and especially because I'm missing out on all these wide receivers right here. It was really weird with, kind of the hand that I was dealt with how the snake draft worked. But that's just kind of how it is and how it goes. Of course, obviously you can trade up and trade down and do whatever you want in your actual startups. This one's just a mock draft against the machine. So let me know what you guys think about this team. Let me know down in the comment section if I should have went in different directions. I'm already kind of seeing some stuff that I'm actually in hindsight would have rather done, but that's all stuff for, for more mock drafts, for trades after, if this was an actual startup, all that fun stuff with Dynasty. So thank you guys so much for watching and for tuning in. We will catch y'all later.